Hey now everybody, this is Professor Island, and today we're discussing how the class generally works, and this is a discussion about flipping the class. Traditionally, in a classroom, what would happen is that the instructor would stand in front of the classroom and give a set of information in the form of perhaps a lecture or something along those lines, and then the students would be given some homework, and they go home, and then they perform the homework, and then they turn around and hand that in. The benefit to that was essentially that class time was used up for the general theoretical instruction of something, and the home time was used for the students to do something in a very practical way. And certainly for your mathematics homework or something along those lines where it's a lot of repetition of the same thing, this can be very effective. However, when it comes to literary analysis and the idea of discussing material, what really helps the student to understand whether or not they're on the right track is to actually have a discussion. Instead of you cold going home and writing a paper for me after hearing a lecture in a classroom or even being in a chat room online. It is much more effective if you are able to discuss these theories, to apply these theories in a live setting and get immediate feedback, because it's much more instructive. And to that end, anybody who has been in one of my on-campus classrooms or who has attended chat knows that it's more about me asking you a series of questions rather than it is about me telling you something directly. To that end, more and more students are being presented with a flipped classroom. The idea is that class time is no longer a speech by the instructor in which the student dutifully writes things down, as much as it is a conversation, and that conversation is predicated on the notion that the students have been already given a certain set of information and that they are ready to apply it in some functional way. And that is how my classes work. When you look at the calendar for your class, you will see that there are several things to choose from for reading. The most obvious, of course, would be the readings themselves, indicated by the author's last name and followed by the title of a story or a play or a poem, as the case may be. Furthermore, there's information that you're supposed to read out of a textbook, and those are indicated by page numbers. Finally, the readings that are on my website are usually indicated by a title, such as things like an outline or commercial and literary fiction or biographical criticism and the like. And in fact, you'll find in most cases you not only get a page of information that you're supposed to read, but also there is a video, very much like this one, that explains what you're supposed to be doing. What I expect you to have done prior to any class meeting, whether it is on campus or it is in the chat room online, is that you'll have read that information. And I take for granted that you've read that information, and instead of me lecturing to you, we are going to have a conversation and we're going to utilize that information. This allows you more time to try out things like symbolism, to practice irony, to practice historical criticism, to practice psychoanalytical criticism, to give it a shot and work through it and get correction and direction, so that way when it comes time for you to write a paper, for you to write a response, for you to write a test, you have actually been practicing it in a very real, very fundamental way that should allow you to get a better product on the paper and therefore get a better grade from me. This does not work if you do not do the reading I assigned you. This does not work if you don't read the story, if you have not examined, the discussion about a particular literary device or a particular philosophical approach. However, if you do follow through with these, you will find that obviously the classroom time itself is far more interesting because you understand what we're talking about. But also you have an opportunity then to play with the material, to practice it, and therefore have a better understanding of what you're supposed to be doing on your papers and tests as you go through the class. It doesn't mean that I'm not open to questions. And in fact, when you ask me a question and it's clear that you've read the material and that you're asking for clarification, that's an excellent way for me to essentially give you more information and to solidify that in your mind. If you ask me a question that makes it clear to me that you've not read the material, in some ways you're forcing me to drop into that lecture mode that we're trying to avoid as much as possible in order to give us more time to actually work with material in class. Read the material as indicated on the calendar. You'll find it either in your book or on my website. Once you've done that and you are enough familiar with it that we are in a classroom setting, you will realize that the application of it is really the most important part, and this will give you an opportunity to work with it and to get a chance to try it out before I grade you on it. Okay? Read the material in advance. Be ready to go. If you have questions, please ask me. You can always send me an email, and I'll answer your question that way. And if it's a good enough question or a bad enough question, I will forward it to everyone because they all need to know that information. All right? Stay in touch.